I'm Troy Hege, the Vice President of Innovation and Technology for the Purdue Research Foundation, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the Gctc Agriculture and Rural Supercluster Workshop today. I would like to thank and acknowledge our sponsors, without whom the financial support for this conference, without their financial support, this conference would not have been possible. We had 4 sponsors for this conference. It was the Purdue Research Foundation, SBA Communications, Telrad Networks, and the Innovation Partners Institute. In addition, I'd like to thank the Nist Gctc Planning Committee, who has worked hard to create a terrific set of sessions over the next 2 days. The committee is Dennis Buckmaster, Professor, Agriculture and Biological Engineering, Dean's Fellow for Digital Agriculture, Purdue University. Gene Rice, Senior Broadband Specialist, National Telecommunications and Information Administration. Josh Sedman, VP Policy, NTCA Rural Broadband Association. Mo Shakuri, Joint Venture Silicon Valley. And Robert Say, Senior Policy Advisor at USDA Telecommunications Program, Rural Utilities Service. So with that, I'd like to kind of turn this over. We'll now get started and turn the floor over to Michael Dunaway. Michael Dunaway is the Associate Director of Innovation, Smart Grid and Cyber Physical Systems Program, National Institute of Standards and Technology, and leads the Nist Global City Teams Challenge program, which orchestrates 9 superclusters, of which the Agriculture and Rural Supercluster, this conference, is one of those.
Thank you all for joining this, the first of our supercluster conferences from the Global City Teams Challenge. Since we began the sequestration and quarantine from COVID-19, this is the very first event. So we really appreciate you all joining this, and we appreciate the work that has gone into putting this together. Particularly, I want to thank Moshe Curry and Josh Seidemann and Dennis Buckmaster for the work that they have done in basically designing this from the ground up and starting our initial conference this year. Really terrific effort, and we appreciate this. Just a little bit of background on the Global City Teams Challenge and the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. So I'm Michael Dunaway. I have just joined Nist as a federal employee as the director or the lead for the Global City Teams Challenge. And the GCTC, as we call it, is a program inside the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, Nist, which Nist itself is essentially the research and development or science and technology arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And Nist formed the GCTC about almost 7 years ago in 2014 with the specific goal of bringing together communities and partnerships that were engaged in identifying specific problems that they were trying to solve, and particularly problems that could be resolved through the application of high technologies. And this spanned a huge number of efforts across the entire country. So Nist pulled this team together for GCTC, and over the period of years, it has now grown to over 150 cities and numbers of them that are international as well, probably 20 additional cities international. We have about 500 corporations, nonprofits, and organizations that are involved in these public-private partnerships. And it grew so big and so rapidly that we actually reorganized it about 4 years ago into what are called superclusters. And I'm sure you all are curious about that, what that means. They're basically clusters of these public-private partnerships that have been working in specific technology vectors. In this particular instance, in agricultural and rural and connectivity in rural communities, I chaired for quite a while. I was co-chair of the Public Safety Supercluster. We have other ones in transportation and wireless connectivity, in city dashboards, in energy, wastewater and water management, and education, and then smart buildings. So we have grown really a really significant program over the last several years. And one of the goals starting out right now, and you all are involved in helping us to launch this initiative, is to basically develop a brand new strategy or to build a strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years for the GCTC. I'm in the process of doing sort of the groundwork planning for that right now. And over the next 3 or 4 months, particularly through the leadership of each of our individual superclusters, we will be bringing together individuals to provide input on what the agenda should actually be. So the real goal of this initiative is that the strategy for the GCTC going forward isn't going to be initiated by me or by Nist or by the Department of Commerce. It's going to be initiated and designed by all of us. You'll be hearing more about that as we finalize the strategy or the process for building the strategy. And the individual superclusters will be playing a real close lead on that, and their outreach to their communities will sort of be the channel through which we're going to bring these groups together. I also wanted to add that the GCTC, as it currently exists, is going to be expanding as well. And it's really fitting. So the name of our group, since it has been formed, has been the Global City Teams Challenge. But it's particularly appropriate, I think, that this is the first initiative launched this year under this new, I'll say, effort to re-strategize or to redesign the GCTC. It's particularly fitting that this is a rural and agricultural effort because although our name is GCTC, and it's about smart cities and bringing technologies to urban areas as it was originally designed, we are particularly interested and will be focusing very much of our effort on the relationship between rural regions and agricultural regions of the country, the densely populated urban areas, and then the smaller towns and communities across the country that have, in many cases, similar problems and challenges, and in many cases, very unique ones. And so we hope to play a much larger role through GCTC in helping the rural, agricultural, and smaller communities of the nation at the same time that we're dealing with the very high technology problems that exist and challenges, and the implementation of higher technologies in smart city regions and urbanized areas, metropolitan areas. So with that, I wanted to say thank you again, specifically to Purdue University, to the city of West Lafayette, and to the Indiana Economic Development Organization or Agency for sponsoring this conference. And look forward to participating in it and to learning, as we all will, as we go forward on this. And again, congratulations to the Ag and Rural Supercluster team who have pulled this together. Very pleased to be here. I'm sorry I can't join you in person, but we're getting used to doing this, and it actually works pretty well in virtual environment in some cases. So thank you all again, and I look forward to working with you all into the future as we build this the GCTC out.
Thank you, Michael. Moving on to our next welcoming session speaker, I'd now like to hear from Bernie Engel, the Associate Dean of Research and Director of the Experiment Station, College of Agriculture, Purdue University, representing Purdue University's College of Agriculture, and Professor Dennis Buckmaster, who is one of the 3 co-chairs of the Agriculture and Rural Supercluster group.
On behalf of Purdue, welcome to campus. On behalf of Purdue Agriculture, let me also bring my greetings from that group as well. Both personally and in my professional life, I live the topics daily that we're talking about. Let's maybe start with the personal piece. Believe it or not, you simply go 8 miles and maybe 8¼ miles to the immediate west of here, and you're in the most rural county in the state, Warren County. What are Warren County's claims to fame? I live there. They don't claim me as a claim to fame, but 400 miles of gravel stone roads. So you could say we still live in the Stone Age in that county, which would be accurate. I think that's maybe the most miles of stone or gravel roads in the state. Not a single stoplight. It's the lowest population density in the state. And so you can guess that agriculture is king, right? So row crop agriculture, animal agriculture, increasingly renewable energy, in some parts of the county, and I think opportunities will continue there. So you can guess then that rural broadband is probably something that does not come up much in a county like that. You find huge gaps in cell coverage in most of the county. In fact, a half mile from my house and my daughter's house, it has to be the right day, right time of year, and stand in the right place to get a little bit of a signal. And other places, you don't get any signal. So, I think many of us live this challenge day in, day out. I come to Purdue campus and we're working to solve many of these challenging problems around the state in our Purdue Ag Centers. We have 8 research farms throughout the state, different microclimates, different soils in rural Indiana. Some do have a little bit of broadband coverage, a little bit of opportunity, others not so much today. So these are places where Purdue researchers are doing great work with plots, fields, and increasingly digital agriculture. Trying to advance that so that we can begin to get into the modern age with much of the digital opportunities that agriculture provides. Many of the challenges that agriculture presents can be solved by digital agriculture. So there's a great deal of work at the Purdue Ag Centers in work around opportunities to flow data sets. I know Dennis and colleagues working with a range of technologies there. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss some of the demonstration later in the week with the aerostat and other things that seem like really interesting approaches to help address and alleviate some of the challenges we face. So we also face some interesting challenges on campus. A few blocks this direction is our Ag Alumni Seed Phenotyping Facility, where we're doing a great deal of work with trying to create the next generation of plants by measuring all kinds of attributes of plants so we can make intelligent decisions about which plants to move forward in breeding next and next and next generations. We're generating terabytes of data a day there with CT X-ray scanners, with hyperspectral scanners, with other kinds of sensing as well. That creates challenges to flow the data, creates challenges to process the data, to get things back like heights of plants, leaf area, leaf architecture, and the list goes on and on and on. Things that are very important if we're to accelerate the process of picking the winners for those next and next and next generations of plants that we all want. Recently, Purdue has made some new investments in this plant science area, so we're broadening that work. We're growing that to expand phenotyping facilities, but also recognizing the needs to incorporate preferences of consumers in some of this. So consumers demand different qualities maybe than we would produce if we didn't account for that, different nutritional values, and want these things to be grown sustainably. So we're trying to now push that into our thinking and into the data analysis pieces of things we're doing around the plants. One that I kid my colleagues a bit about, we've also acknowledged that trees are plants too. So we've grown this initiative into a digital forestry initiative. Huge opportunities to think about this flow of data and management of forests that are in this landscape within Indiana are often isolated small areas in this part of the state, bigger in the southern part of the state, but they're a huge resource that has largely gone untapped in rural areas, and huge opportunities around digital technologies and data flows and analysis to address some of the real needs there. So another thing that we should look forward to coming out of some of the efforts here at Purdue. I've touched on a couple of opportunities, a couple of challenges. Great to see that this workshop is addressing many of these. We certainly look forward to continuing to be strong partners and collaborators in some of these kinds of efforts as we look to the future. Maybe just a couple of other things that I should point out and then let us move on. So one of the approaches that I think is near and dear to most of us in some of these areas is that we have extremely strong and capable partners from across the university campus here, but also across the Midwest, across the nation, across the globe for that matter. It's not uncommon to see our agricultural group working side by side with engineers, with polytechnic faculty and students, with science faculty, students, and others not only from Purdue, but also, as I said, across the region, country, and globe. I think, this convergence, and I think fittingly so, we're in the convergence building today. This convergence of technologies and ideas is going to be incredibly important as we move forward. And maybe in closing, one final opportunity that I was visiting with our colleague from USDA about a few moments ago is we've recently moved the Regional Center for Development that focuses very much on rural communities, rural areas for this north central region, about 12 states in the region, to Purdue. And I think that's a great partner. There are other corresponding centers for rural development in other regions of the country with a mission and a goal from USDA to focus on some of the challenges that we're talking about today, as well as many other challenges that these areas experience. So I think another great resource. So thank you, and look forward to a great day. I'll have an opportunity to spend the day with you. Unfortunately, the challenge of my schedule doesn't let me continue tomorrow and on Friday, but have a great conference and welcome to Purdue.
Thank you, Professor Engel. Next, I'd like to welcome Mayor John Dennis. Mayor Dennis is the 13-year mayor of West Lafayette, Indiana, which is home to Purdue University, and also a key partner to the connected community efforts of Discovery Park District, which is where this conference is taking place.
My name is John Dennis. I am mayor of West Lafayette, and I have been here for 13 plus years. Prior to that, I worked in the city of Lafayette and did so for the 23 years. I was with Lafayette Police Department. And I think that when we start talking about how cities become competitive, because that's what we are. Cities are competitive entities whose product and goal is trying to bring citizenry and development and interest and status into your city. And when we look at how we as local government are empowered to do so, it really does get down to a level where trying to market our community is essential. Trying to use existing technology to create that marketing environment is critical to that goal. And in a city that houses an internationally known and recognized university like Purdue, our challenges are somewhat lessened because of that branding that we're in a position to be able to share with Purdue. But the fact of the matter is that outreach programs that we have can sometimes send a message that doesn't really resonate well with the citizenry that we serve. And the reason why that is because sometimes we as governmental entities don't necessarily get the data that we need to make those informed decisions. And that's where there's that break. As a mayor, there is expectations that we're in a position to make sure that the quality of life of each and every citizen within our authority is addressed immediately and addressed with the necessary positive outcome. And if anybody believes that that can actually happen, please raise your hand, because I have some land in Florida. It doesn't necessarily happen that way. And that is not because of any kind of communicative breakdown. That's basically because we are restricted in our resources to be able to provide that level of personal one-on-one service. But does that mean that the community falls down as a whole? Absolutely not. We're still doing the best that we can with the technology that we have. But the information that we get is crucial for us to make decisions. Case in point, we recently finished a road project in conjunction with our great partnership with Purdue University. It's called State Street Road Project. That was a $150 million project. And in the state of Indiana, which has moments of extreme progression and then sometimes some sad moments of regression, that was sort of an out of the park concept. Two things first off came to play. It was how can a city annex a university and then still have a positive relationship? Yeah, people that worked on that understand that that's not easy. Well, it's all about making sure that what you have, you share, and what you share, you appreciate, and also that's reciprocated. Have, share, and appreciate. That builds a relationship that's going to last. The second thing is pulling on the same side of the road for a mutual goal. That's what's going to make a relationship last. And that can only be done when the necessary information is exchanged at an extremely rapid pace. That's what we're talking about today. When we're talking about roads, when we're talking about sewers, when we're talking about the basic mechanics of government, we can only make decisions based on the information that we receive. Some of the stuff that we use is archaic. I mean, we still in government do things by hand. We still in government do things because of the largest number of complaints, a very reactionary government. That doesn't necessarily bode well for folks who are working in the future. They're working on planning. They're working on trying to figure out how do we beat the complaint. And by the way, if you come up with that, right, please let me know. I'd love to hear that one too. But that's where government both strides and stumbles. And making sure that we have the necessary information and the protocols and the process to get that information is crucial. We in the city of West Lafayette have invested millions of dollars to try and get to that point. And we have had success. There's like no success, and there's great success, and then there's success. And we have had success. When we talk about providing the necessary services, we're in a position to do so because of the geographic footprint that we share, the density of our population. We are one of the most densely populated cities in the state of Indiana. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think we're in the top 20 in the United States, again, because we're a small footprint. But getting that necessary information is crucial for us to be able to make informed decisions to better serve our citizenry. Where does that information come from? Right now, there's two things. It's this here, technology via the internet, etc., or phone calls. And I guess there's a third, which is active physical participation in our public meetings. A lot of that allows for us to make some subjective decisions on trying to improve the quality of life in our community. But sometimes trying to get that objective data can be a challenge. And again, that's when this type of technology comes into play. If we know what the lifespan of a road is, and we have the necessary retrieval processes within that road to be able to figure that out, that allows for us to do several things. First off, when it comes to dealing with taxpayers' dollars, it allows for us to be able to plan how to spend their money, and do so in a logical, objective way. Second off, when it comes to us as consumers of that product, those tax dollars, it allows for us to do better planning when it comes to making major purchases. Does anybody have any idea how much a garbage truck costs? Yeah, about $500,000. So when you see one of those trucks going down the road and it has that wonderful odor that follows that, especially in the heat of the summer with the high humidity, just think there's $500,000 rolling down the road. And when you see bunches of them parked, you realize that that's a significant investment on quality of life for a community. Now, the other side of that is that there is technology even within those trucks, those instruments. There's multiple operations that go on within a garbage truck that have to have the necessary communication with a major database, with a major computer, with a major brain, so that we know if something's starting to fail on that, we can get in there at a time to go ahead and intervene and make sure that we can fix it before it goes into complete breakdown. There's nothing sadder than seeing a garbage truck being towed to a ramp. It's almost redundant, isn't it? But that's the kind of technology that governments are using. The other thing is that when we reach out to other governmental entities, when we work with our close partners over in the city of Lafayette, when we work with Purdue, when we work with Crawfordsville, when we work with South Bend, when we work with Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, being able to share data on a common platform allows for us to basically speak the same language. And again, for us in a community that has so much to brag about, that's something else that we can use to a point where it's going to put us not just into the future, but into the stratosphere. So, as the mayor of West Lafayette, I welcome you here. As a consumer of government services, I hope that you guys continue to bring up great ideas so that we can steal them and use them to serve our citizens. But most importantly, we are living in a time where the future comes and goes like that. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you're doing. If there's anything we can do as local government, please let us know. Now, I have to apologize. I have to leave. I have mayor stuff to do. So thank you so much for having me here this morning. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Mayor Dennis. Now I am pleased to hear from Dave Roberts about Indiana's innovation and technology agenda. Dave Roberts is the Chief Innovation Officer at the Indiana Economic Development Corporation for the state of Indiana.
Welcome on behalf of the governor and Secretary Brad Chambers. Wanted to welcome you. We're glad to have you with us. For those of you from Indiana, as a public servant, I want to thank you for paying your taxes. I would also like to thank Michael for going first on the virtual participation here. I serve the state, as you mentioned, as the Chief Innovation Officer. I've been in this role for about 4 years, coming from the private sector and then the public-private sector, which I'll get into in a minute. And it's been an opportunity to really explore the opportunities that are at this intersection of technology, innovation, entrepreneurship in traditional sectors and in new sectors that are changing the way the world works and operates. The state of Indiana itself has set aside under, at the time, Governor Mitch Daniels, now president of Purdue University, the Department of Commerce, and set it up as a quasi-agency so we can move at the speed of business. But our overarching goal is to attract, retain, and help businesses expand here in Indiana. And so I'll give you a couple of statistics on how things went. And candidly, while 2020 was tragic in so many different ways, I will say that we had, in an interesting twist, a record-breaking year. We saw businesses make 31,300 job commitments. That's usually looking forward over the next 5-year period. And that is an all-time high, over 15% higher than the previous high in 2019. Those wages, which is something that we'll get to as we talk about the quality of those jobs and the future proofing of those jobs, was the second highest we've ever seen at $28.13, which is nearly 20% above our state average on a per hour basis. And we also saw commitment to over $5.5 billion of capital investment, all of which were very, very high. As I mentioned, the job commitment all-time high, wages second, and I believe that capital investment was still in our top 5. We're also not losing much steam here in 2021. We have already gotten nearly 20,000 job commitments as of the middle of this month. That average wage has dipped below $28, but it's still right in that neighborhood of around 20% above our state average. And it's been in a variety of sectors. These are all from 2020. We saw Toyota committing to 2 lines of electric vehicles in their Princeton, Indiana plant, Apple with a distribution facility here, and you see others with Domino's and some fun things like Rahal Letterman, Lanigan Racing. One of the other things that helps in our ecosystem is the ability for the state to partner with a nonprofit venture capital firm that makes direct investments in startups, and that partner is Elevate Ventures. I think it's fairly well known to those of you from the state of Indiana, but just to hit a highlight, they specialize in pre-seed, seed, and early round investment in startups. They are the #1 most active VC in the Great Lakes region and ranked #5 regionally or globally, I'm sorry. And their portfolio includes over 400 companies, all of which are in Indiana. And over an 11-year period, that has meant that there's been over $1.25 billion invested into those companies, a little over 116 million of which came through Elevate Ventures. And then you see the leverage factor there, over $1.1 billion from private co-investment. So as we see success in the innovation entrepreneurship economy in Indiana, a lot of that is thanks to the ability for the state to partner with a great partner like Elevate Ventures. Let me zoom out just a little bit and maybe talk about how they fit into our overall state strategy for innovation entrepreneurship. Again, at a high level, here's our mission and vision. The mission for innovation entrepreneurship in the state is very, very similar to what we have for the IEDC broadly, to create those higher wage opportunities and increase socioeconomic mobility in a diverse, resilient economy. And then maybe more specifically, the vision is for us to capitalize on disruptive trends and opportunities in strategic and existing new sectors. We do that 3 ways: investing in industry-led public-private partnerships, providing ample capital, which I mentioned a little bit with Elevate Ventures, and then fostering a culture of creativity. And frankly, I know a lot of the research and development, maybe solving rural broadband challenges and smart agriculture is incredibly challenging, but actually that culture of creativity, the people element of this is at times the hardest part for us. Here's just generally what we're observing. These are some of the traditional sectors that have been quite strong in Indiana: manufacturing, logistics, transportation, agriculture, life sciences. And technology historically was this separate vertical over here. But as we think about it today, it's really now horizontal, cross-cutting all of these and creating, like I said, those new opportunities and disruptions within those existing sectors. So our question then is really, how do we put together a winning strategy? And we think about that holistically. Some of these things, the IEDC and our innovation entrepreneurship team touch pretty directly, like the entrepreneurship, the P3 ecosystem and innovation. But we're also tracking state initiatives and encouraging quality of place, quality of talent, and venture capital. As we look at where we compete, probably most notably for this group, in the upper left-hand corner, the communications piece, and then lower right-hand, ag bioscience. We have decided strengths in both of them, and I think you'll hear plenty about that over the next 2 days. In our existing ecosystem, the IEDC is participating at that early stage of cultivation of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. That's the education piece at all ages across the spectrum. Then as folks are entering into building a business, we have a small business development center ecosystem, which I'll tell you just a little bit about, and a number of other resources that can help nurture that entrepreneurial spirit. We're also then in that next category, encouraging and resourcing entrepreneurs and innovators with a number of public-private partnerships and strong relationships with our university ecosystem, such as Purdue. And then finally, we're helping ignite that opportunity with some capital, either direct investment or through a collection of funds that we're partnered with. Just real quickly here, a couple of quick things on the cultivation or education side. We have a youth entrepreneurship program called Innovate Within. In 2021, we had over 75% of our counties represented where student teams pitched actual companies, not just sort of thought projects, to a panel of experts. And then we had a state finals where the governor helped determine ultimately a state winner. And then they go through a summer cohort where they continue to refine and grow their business. On nurturing, I mentioned the small business development centers. Again, in 2020, we had some really surprising and we're grateful to have such excellent metrics hit. We had over 30,000 hours of counseling, and you might imagine folks didn't want to do the counseling. Well, we were able to do virtually, and we had a lot of small businesses that were struggling in 2020, as you can well understand. But even in that pandemic setting, we created almost 1,500 jobs through those businesses that were receiving the counseling. I mentioned resourcing and public-private partnerships. We have a number of them across the spectrum of technologies. IBRI is related to biosciences. IACME, which is up at Purdue, is around advanced materials. We have the 5G acceleration zone, which is closely, you'll hear more from, I think, some of the folks here shortly on that. Battery Innovation Center, which is my own background prior to coming into the state, focused on future energy technologies. IoT Lab and EMC Squared, which is an advanced manufacturing initiative that's just being stood up. And then finally, I mentioned the Elevate Ventures piece previously and some of the statistics there. And really, again, what we're doing is looking at those high wage, future-proof kind of opportunities. So you see in their portfolio, those companies account for 2,900 jobs, paying over $70,000 a year. And that to us is really the mark of what we want to be encouraging through the opportunities in innovation and entrepreneurship. So I'll finish here with this slide, and I mentioned the high wage opportunities a couple times, and disruptive opportunities a couple times, and new sectors a couple of times. So you take nothing else away from this theme, from this set of comments. It's those themes that we're leaning into, and we want to see prosper. So specifically with the focus on smart ag and rural broadband, I can tell you that this is something that the governor and the state prioritizes and is leaning into. Specifically on the broadband side, several years ago, he championed a $100 million initiative to expand rural broadband. And just this last legislative session earlier this year, set aside another $250 million out of some of the ARP funding. And then we have finally another program called READY, which is a regional initiative for improving quality of place, promoting innovation, entrepreneurship, and talent retention throughout the state of Indiana. So there'll be even more opportunities for those regions to promote and suggest broadband connectivity in those areas of high need.
Next is Sean Hendrix, the CTO of NineTwelve and the Managing Director of the Indiana 5G Zone, which is leading efforts around the state, including right here in Discovery Park District, to advance 5G innovation.
And my name is Sean Hendrix. I'm the CTO of NineTwelve and a public-private partnership, and also managing director of what we call the Indiana 5G Zone. As a quick introduction, Dave and our colleagues at the IEDC just mentioned the role that the P3 ecosystem plays as part of the statewide economic development strategy. And so really NineTwelve is part of that innovation ecosystem, that P3. So we're really operating at the intersection between industry, government, and academia to accelerate and develop some of the critical technology needs. And I think, by way of alignment, Dave's presentation just a few minutes ago, you're starting to see that, with IEDC setting the strategy, the P3 ecosystem is really working on carrying that strategy forward into implementation. And you'll hear a lot about work that we do being highly collaborative in nature and building out networks. Well, in this case, we're referring to human and corporate networks, not just telecommunications networks. These networks become important because with the team that's in place there in the room, we're seeing academic innovations, inventions, scientific breakthroughs taking place. We see government policy that's encouraging that, setting priorities, and aligning that across the nation. But there's also a role and a need to begin to transform those innovations, those breakthroughs, and really get them into the commercial marketplace. And so the role of NineTwelve and the kind of the P3 ecosystem in general that we've built here in Indiana is really focused on building those networks for the purpose of taking those groundbreaking solutions to market. NineTwelve in particular, even though today we're going to really focus around the 5G advanced communications elements, also has initiatives in advanced manufacturing, hypersonics, as well as trusted microelectronics. So why would you go with NineTwelve Institute, and what can really a P3 come to offer in this ecosystem? Well, we talk a lot about practical applications. So it's again really taking that scientific breakthrough, teaming it, supporting the early stage small business, or in some cases non-traditional corporations, and really helping them to transform that into an immediate practical application. You might even say help them get to market. We do this by a network of test beds, and in the telecommunications world, we talk a lot about DevSecOps. This is the development operations layered with security that allows us to quickly and rapidly develop applications in a near production environment that allows that application then to quickly deploy. This is all about speed to market and getting these breakthrough technologies out from kind of the discovery phase, getting those commercial partners, and then getting them to market quickly. The purpose of this all really goes to de-risking the the capital investment by creating test beds that these test beds tend to be very high capitally intensive. A couple $1 million is not uncommon for one of these test beds, which can be a barrier for development and deployment for early stage companies. Just as important, these test beds then, they're pre-developed. Again, the DevSecOps environment has already been established. That lets companies come in, especially software companies, and quickly and rapidly develop, which again cuts down their time to market. In the world that we're in today on commercialization, I think we're all aware that time to market is critical. And so if companies have to spend their time building out their environment, their DevOps environments, then that becomes a barrier, a barrier to them getting to market quickly. So focusing in on the Indiana 5G zone initiative, and Dave made some references to this in his material. This is a kind of a branded initiative inside of the 912 Institute. And this is a fully operational 5G test bed. What's that mean? So you see some imagery behind me, maybe in my earlier video, is that we literally have the networks, the radios, the servers, again, that DevOps environment already created, and that platform is available and accessible for academic researchers, corporate researchers, and that environment is available for early stage and startup companies. So by creating these test beds, we're really helping to enable the digital transformation of the physical industries. And the prior speakers mentioned, especially in the agriculture field, but it also applies to advanced manufacturing, smart cities. The conference is taking place within the Discovery Park District, which is really a living lab for smart cities initiatives. All of these use cases, all of these applications require the creation, the interface of sensors into networks to support that data collection, and all of the software infrastructure that's necessary then to convert that information into essentially intelligence data that can then be used for the decision making that the mayor referenced, enabling in some cases mayors of cities, but in other cases some of our critical ag and biosciences corporations. As I mentioned previously, the lab is a state-sponsored P3, and we're really the first in the nation to commercialize this type of test bed. And while we're focused today around work taking place at Purdue University, as well as inside of the state of Indiana, I would like to mention that this is really a national effort. I couldn't join you today because I'm actually out in Hawaii, and the Indiana 5G zone is actually partnered with groups out here in Hawaii to kind of support the integration of this test bed into a national security, but also a maritime economic development mission. And so, especially as these network technologies help us to virtualize our world, both the lessons learned as to how we develop and deploy in these environments, these can be spread throughout the state, throughout the country, to help the nation more quickly and rapidly adopt 5G technologies, get them to market to help us in our near-peer competitions. We're here today really focusing around the digital agriculture and rural broadband topics. But inside the Indiana 5G zone, we have a couple of additional focuses. We talked briefly about smart cities, the need and the need to really transform our cities into smart cities, whether that's traffic management, energy management, public safety, information technology, 5G networks really become the platform to gather data and enable decision making both in real time as well as strategically. So whether a intersection is making decisions in real time as to how to signal and traffic lights to enhance the traffic flow, or if you're a state or city government trying to make decisions about what infrastructure investments, this data, these networks, this computing power is really necessary to help transform. And as Dave mentioned, these technologies are not just gadgets. These technologies go to helping to maximize our investments that we make in capital, but they also play into the quality of place that helps make cities and towns great places to live and work. Closely related to the digital agriculture is the concept of the Industry 4.0. And as Dave mentioned, with Indiana being heavily focused around the manufacturing sector, we are at the cusp of a widespread transformation of our manufacturing industry from the current Industry 3.0 into 4.0. And what that really means is the adaptation, the adoption of information technology into the manufacturing space to enable process optimization, but also optimization of supply chains, product mix, even build decisions inside of manufacturing plants. And there's one point of view that says that really digital agriculture in many ways could be an extension of the Industry 4.0 factory of the future as we look to apply production process concepts into the agricultural production areas. There are very specific, what I'll call, I always like to say that the chemical engineers, the mechanical engineering functions of manufacturing are critical and are at the base of how we make things. But it's worth noting that, as Dave showed in his earlier presentation, that the information technology layer is cutting through that. And so there's a lot of work, a lot of opportunity in really driving the adaptation, developing the use cases of these advanced networks, 5G networks, into to enable the transformation into Industry 4.0. And finally, when you get into the national security and public safety space, these networks really help us develop situational awareness, help us manage public safety, even environmental safety like wildfire management, flood management, and other characteristics. And as you look across, maybe you're starting to get the sense, and I'm sure this audience is fully aware, that while these are use cases or focus areas, applications, you might say, a lot of the core technologies, networking technologies are common between these applications. So developing test beds that can be a platform, accessible DevOps for these network technologies really gives industry the playground or the opportunity to rapidly develop. So inside the 5G zone, what do we do with this test bed? What does it mean to bring a test bed and make that available for industry, academia, and government? Well, first of all, it's an environment, right? I keep talking about the concept of DevSecOps inside of that. And so that's a very IT term. But as we look at these applications, what it means is that we've got 5G radios, we have cloud access, we have mobile edge compute, we have IoT connectivity. All of these kind of core elements give us the platform to really develop these end-to-end applications. Some of that development is I'll say, very IT focused. IT, I'll say, concerns or challenges, like how do you route data packets from sensors to the edge or to the cloud? Having an environment where you can experiment with those kind of routing pathways and routing technologies is important to kind of architecting your base solution. and then having data encryption on top of that, adding the security layer on top of all the technology, all the information technology. You know, as we've seen here recently in the last several months with examples of whether it's Colonial Pipeline or other types of cyber attacks, I think we're starting to understand as a nation that really all of our applications, whether it's our personal devices or our networks at work, really need to be robust and resilient from a cybersecurity standpoint. That's not just a kind of a national security function anymore. It's really applies to all of us on a broad basis. So being able to bring in security into an operating environment and give those security solutions to companies who may just be focused on, you know, data analytics or IoT devices to help them round out their environment to get a full solution to market becomes very important. So this environment really allows us then, you know, what have we done with it? So up till now, the first thing we did is we integrated these components, and that really gave us a reference architecture that is accessible, usable by industry. These configurations, now companies don't have to start from ground zero. They can pretty much pick up and start developing using the architectures and configurations that we've already developed. We've talked a little bit about security. We've done some of the first demonstrations in the country around quantum safe encryption as a service, which is critical to essentially securing IoT devices over these advanced networks. You know, whether we're talking agriculture or smart cities or other applications, IoT plays a huge component in interfacing those sensors. And so the ability to bring an easy to use, strong, resilient security solution is really critical. Taking some of these base learnings, we've been running two-way bidirectional encrypted video between the edge and IoT devices. This is important because video starts to become one of the key technologies, whether you're using it to monitor crop progress, whether you're using it for traffic management, logistics, or even quality control inside of the manufacturing environment. Video really becomes kind of a base sensor for all of these applications. And it just so happens that it requires the characteristics of a traditional 5G network. So high bandwidth, low latency. And these video applications, if they don't have access to that, then we really impede the ability to do the image processing in the machine learning. And then, as I mentioned, you know, really this effort, while we're focused in Indiana, this is really a nationwide effort. So being able to partner with the National Spectrum Consortium, the Puerto Rico 5G Zone, Texas A&M, their iTech Center, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the groups here in Hawaii has really been critical in kind of helping to expand the ecosystem, but it also provides a feedback loop as these organizations are out, these other P3s are out in the market experimenting and developing technologies, doing tech scouting with companies in their market. That provides a return pathway for us to enhance our activities and helps build a more collaborative and robust ecosystem. And finally, I just want to take a moment and just quickly hit on where the team is at there in the conference room. And the folks on site will have the opportunity to tour our brand new innovation center located there at the Convergence building. This is literally just opening yesterday. We got our first notice or ability to occupy the space. So as you guys have already seen, for those on site, it's right there at the heart of the Discovery Park District. It's really a focal point for all innovation. So at the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned 5G networks, but also advanced manufacturing, trusted electronics. So the NineTwelve Convergence Center can really be a place to help convene all of those initiatives inside of the DPD environment. However, it has leveraging the CBRS network that's in the building as well as across the campus. It really helps to enhance the mission of the Indiana 5G zone with the proximity to the subject matter experts located at Purdue University, as well as some of the co-located corporate partners. It really it really helps to enhance the idea of the living laboratory, but it creates an environment where small, mid-sized, even mature companies, large companies can come in and really have immediate access to the resources they need to rapidly develop and to commercialize their application. So with that, I'll go ahead and close, and thanks again to Troy and the team at PRF and the opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing at NineTwelve and the Indiana 5G zone.
Thank you, Sean. And there was, I think, one question in the chat, and it is, does 5G zone work with NSF power wireless research sites?
Yeah, so we engage with the power program through the National Spectrum Consortium. And I guess to go a little bit deeper, so we're part of what's known as the Labs Across America initiative as part of the National Spectrum Consortium. So while power is focusing on kind of fundamental research, we are working on the commercialization end of that spectrum. So we're aware we kind of collaborate with them, but we do have kind of different focus areas.
Dean Mung Chang is the Dean of the College of Engineering at Purdue University. And he is our last speaker this morning as part of the opening session. So without further ado, Dean Chang.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me first get the right slides here. I do want to share a few pictures here this morning with all of you. So thank you so much for the introduction and the invitation. I'm sorry that I could only join at this hour. I just had a meeting with President Mitch Daniels, and he sends his warm regards to all the participants here today. And to those from different agencies in the US government, thank you for thinking of Purdue and Indiana. And thank you for this great partnership. It's truly a public-private and university partnership here, looking at the critical roles of communications, in particular in our rural community, but truly in staying competitive as a country here in the United States. So my name is Mung Chiang. I am the, now I got the slides here, thanks. So I am the Executive Vice President of Purdue University and the John A. Edwardson Dean of the College of Engineering, which is now ranked number 4 in the US in our graduate research ranking. And we graduate as many engineers as MIT, Stanford, Berkeley combined. So that is the one commercial line that I have to say every time I go anywhere. That's part of my job description, but we're very proud of the pinnacle of excellence at scale here in Purdue Engineering. And wearing my nerdy hat as an engineering professor myself, an entrepreneur myself, I will start out by talking a bit about the technical side of a 6G roadmap here. And as mentioned, that I've been here at Purdue for the past 4 years. Prior to that, I was at Princeton and also founded the Princeton Edge Lab and a number of startup companies and nonprofit consortia in edge computing. And over the past year of 2020, I served also as the Science and Tech Advisor to the US Secretary of State, and together with many great colleagues who are continuing the work in a truly nonpartisan continuity here, we are pushing forward the tech diplomacy for the country. So I see the big trends for 6G as the following. The first is going from one domain to a whole foundation for other domains. Now, in particular, before 5G or 6G coming up, we have telecom as one of the pillars among many domains, agriculture, manufacturing, and so on. But going forward, it's going to be the foundation of all other domains. It will be embedded in their domains, and it will be not only communicating, but controlling. So there will be the feedback control loop, and there will be the stream mining of edge analytics for AI. It will be dispersive and embedded, and supporting the revolution in many other industry domains. A second big trend is from one network to a network of networks. And the 6G will likely be a coexistence of public networks that we're used to and private networks, private enterprise network, private learning network, private industrial networks. It will be a coexistence of Wi-Fi 6 and future Wi-Fis alongside cellular, including smaller cells and bigger cells. It will be coexistence of terrestrial network and non-terrestrial, including the balloons and the LEO satellites. A third major trend is going from separate ownership to dynamic sharing. And as it becomes the foundation of all domains, instead of having always siloed deployments that each operator will own its own dedicated separate infrastructure, we're looking at the opportunity of shared infrastructure and shared spectrum. On the spectrum front, it would be dynamically shared, and CBRS is one version of it. And on the infrastructure front, we can imagine a shared radio access network whereby multiple operators can be leasing different slices of it. Another big trend is the throughput versus latency. From the second generation, if you remember those phones, the first generation of digital wireless communications terrestrially, we have gone through a dramatic increase in throughput, peak and average throughput, from 2 to 3 to 4G into 5G. But starting with 5G, and certainly much more so in 6G coming up, it will be much more about latency. And I don't mean the time it takes to download a file, that would be the inverse of throughput, but latency as in responsiveness, as in how long does it take to respond? What is the jitter or the variation of such responsiveness? Throughput will continue to climb up, but much more importantly is the reduction of latency and jitter that will enable new services, new sectors, and new revenue streams enabled by edge compute. So turning into the research side, I want to highlight two particular trends. One is the edge compute trend. You see on the left-hand side here, the cloud that's good for many things: storage, heavy-duty computation, coordination, wide area connectivity. Right-hand side, you see the edge or the fog, including real-time processing is good for that, good for rapid innovation, good for client-centric decisions, and good for resource pooling with device to device or device for device. Now, it is not a dichotomy, it is a continuum from the cloud to the things via the fog through the edge. It's also not an either or, you need both. But with the rise of the edge compute, we see a distribution of functions increasingly towards the end user, whether they are human beings or machines and things, in terms of communication, control, sensing, computation, and storage. And that's what enables the cyber-physical interaction to happen as 6G gets embedded into other industries. A second research trend is open. And this is a word that's been used in many different ways in the same community. First, we do care about a free and open internet without censorship, without blockage of internet access. We do also want to have the open network architectures whereby the interfaces among the modules of the network will be increasingly open so that you can switch different potential subsystem vendors as long as they can be integrated back as a turnkey solution to the service providers or the private network owners. A third is the open business model. That is, you will have a more fluid interaction between the vendor community and the operator community. Another is open source, where the software base could be for free, could be for fee, but are following the open source philosophy. And then there is the intellectual property ownership and licensing agreement and the standardization process and how open is that process. So the word open is used in these 6 different ways by the same community. But I do believe that number 2 here in this list, the open network architectures, will be a major architectural research improvement in the coming 6G. And finally, I want to brag a bit about Indiana here. You have seen some of these pictures. I'll just show 2. One is in an urban setting, one is in a suburb and a rural setting. On the urban setting front, this is the beautiful downtown Indianapolis. And you see on the map there, 155 West Ohio Street. And that is the headquarters of the Indy 5G zone. This is an economic development zone with a public-private partnership. State of Indiana through IEDC, AT&T, Verizon, many other private partners, as well as Purdue. And what we're doing there is to encourage application providers, those who write new revenue-generating innovations that are riding on top of the new enabling 5G infrastructure will come here to downtown Indianapolis. And we've seen quite a few of these application providers coming in. And as part of that, we also embedded a research testbed from Purdue University in downtown Indy, whereby we can do programmable physical layer as well as upper layer, so that we can change and experiment different parameters and protocols while still remaining an integral part of a commercially deployed network. So it's the best of both experimentability and commercial realism that's quite unique in the country, arguably one of the first open in the air 5G edge testbed. The other story is on our own campus here in West Lafayette. I assume that David Broker have already shown you this picture here, but to the right-hand side is the West Lafayette campus. To the left-hand side is what President Daniels refers to as the Innovation Campus. It consists of the airport, consists of the aerospace district, and it consists of the DP Discovery Park district, which is the mixed use of land with learning, living, working, and all mixed together into this very unique smart district. And this smart district is not only an infrastructure project, but also it is a playground of lab to life, turning innovations residing in labs as a prototype today into product-ready, commercialized deployment opportunities. And part of that is communications technology. And that's where we have the 566 living labs, the 5G, Wi-Fi 6 and 6G living labs in this DP district, where we're going to deploy many of the innovation I just mentioned and many of these macro trends as we go into 6G right here. This is one of the most unique deployment, because we're not talking about academic research lab anymore. We're not even talking about a startup or large company's product prototyping effort. This is commercial deployment, meet the most cutting edge innovation. And if you go out a little bit further, you see the rural deployment, including one of the first ARSC-based broadband coverage for our rural neighborhood, as well as a CBRS-based e-learning for remote access next month. So there is a truly tremendous opportunity here in Indiana, from urban setting to the campus and smart city setting to rural setting. And the key phrase, I think, is indeed taking the most innovative solutions to commercially deployable products and deploy them. We learn so much more when we deploy compared to only doing the research inside the lab. And with that, I thank all of you for your participation. And I know that in particular, Department of Commerce and many units of it, Department of Agriculture, there is a tremendous momentum in going down the innovation lane towards 6G. And we're here to partner in any way we can. Back to you, Dave or Troy and Mo. Thank you.